Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Blitz Sports Media. I'm Ryan Linkletter. I'm here with my co-host Brady Penn. We're on the Blitz angle tonight, and it is officially the NFL offseason. We have rumors going wild at this point. We have a lot of information to discuss with you guys, kind of where we're leaning as far as some of these rumors go and where our predictions are going to wind up. And then we're going to kind of discuss some of the information that we already know, kind of what's going to happen at that point, Brady. So let's get right into it and start with the biggest hire of the week. It was Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore was great this season for the Eagles. He's been a hot candidate for some time. Obviously, things did not work out at the end of his tenure in Dallas or Los Angeles, but now he finds himself with the Saints, who, I mean, we both considered a very tough job for whatever coach took that job. What do you think Kellen Moore's future in New Orleans is going to look like?
Bleak. I'm not big on this move, not just because of Kellen Moore. One thing I'm trying to get it pulled up here, but the Eagles were sixth in EPA per play last year. Their offense was not, or this year, the offense wasn't the play issue last year. Like it was their defense. They went from seventh in EPA to sixth this year, adding Saquon Barkley. There really wasn't this marked improvement. That was obviously on the other side of the ball with Vic Fangio. Kellen Moore had already been in two places before. He was okay in Dallas, and then obviously not very successful his year in LA with Brandon Staley and company. And that's what led him to be in Philadelphia. But it's not just him, though. The Saints as a whole, they've got a coach killer at quarterback right now. We'll see if they end up letting Rattler take the reins over the next few years. And even if they do, is he the answer? They've got a couple bright pieces in Olave, who's not shown that he can be healthy at all. And at this point is kind of a health liability with the concussion stuff. And then Rashid Shaheed, who's also coming off of a season-ending injury, and aging Alvin Kamara, a really old defense that just lost a really good defensive mind leading it. I just we'll see with Kellen Moore, but I'm not expecting this to be some long, highly successful tenure over there in New Orleans. And I honestly think that the only reason that he even ended up getting this job was just a process of elimination and a mix of candidates not wanting it.
Yeah, I mean, it's the least enticing job in football right now. You have a lot of money tied up in these veterans who are not as good as they once were. We saw a lot of regression on this defense, who has a lot of those veterans. You have Derek Carr on a massive contract. He could be a cut candidate this year. Yes, they could save money, but Brady, if they do cut him, they're going to eat a lot of money in dead cap, which doesn't bode well for their future. They have a ton of money tied up in the future already from contracts they have pushed to try to maintain that Super Bowl window that never materialized. And you look at both sides of the ball. I mentioned the age, right? The age is one thing, but they don't have a lot of young pieces to go with those veterans. It's not a very young, bright group of players on the Saints roster that you look at and say, oh, they got some up and comers that can fill in for these veterans. No, they do not. They don't have a lot of those young pieces who could fill in, and they're going to have to draft really well here in the next few seasons to get that. Their roster is at a complete point where it is just trending downhill. They haven't hit rock bottom yet. They still consistently are at that point where they're a 5 to 8 win team, and it's probably going to keep getting worse as it goes. Alvin Kamara was healthy a majority of this season and was really good. I don't expect that production from him next year. The offensive line was already banged up. They have a lot of veterans there that haven't been able to stay healthy over the last 2 years. The wide receiver group, you mentioned the injuries there. How are those guys going to bounce back? They're nice young pieces in Olave and Shaheed, but without them last year, they were the worst wide receiver group in football, and who knows what their availability is going to be like this year. The Saints is a tough job. Now, as far as Kellen Moore goes, we've seen in the past few seasons a lot of one-and-done coaches. I hope that Kellen Moore actually gets a real shot to prove that he can coach a little bit. We'll see if he gets more than a year. But this job was tough to take. A lot of people didn't want this job. Kellen Moore took it, and Kellen Moore believes he can fix this team, and that is going to be a tough task for Kellen Moore. I'm really relying on him bringing in a good staff, offense and defensively, to help make this team get the most out of it. And the general manager there is going to have to do a hell of a job maneuvering this cap that, is just brutal at this point.
Yeah, and I think that there's a good argument to be made that the Saints are in the worst position in the NFC South. The Falcons, obviously, we don't really know if Raheem Morris is going to pan out or not yet, but they have the talent on the roster with Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Michael Penix, Chris Lindstrom, Jesse Bates, guys like that. Panthers, if they have a good draft, they could be in a nice position. They got Bryce Young, who kind of proved himself a little bit more in year 2. If they get him a wide receiver like Ted McMillan or somebody in the draft, they could be set up well. If they get a defensive guy, a high-impact defensive guy, could help them out for a unit that struggled. Obviously, we know Tampa Bay has won the division 4 years in a row, I believe it is. Baker Mayfield just had an awesome year, although he's about to have his third OC in 3 years. Mike Evans, Bucky Irving. The talent, obviously, I think the worst talent in the division is either Carolina or New Orleans. And I think that Carolina's got some young guys that could pan out and make it clearly New Orleans. And Carolina's already started their rebuild. That's one thing that's kind of hurt the Saints, is they've refused to ever rebuild. They've always felt like they could just kind of, tread water and maybe make a run since Drew Brees retired, and that just hasn't happened at all with multiple different quarterbacks. Andy Dalton, Jameis Winston, Derek Carr. It just hasn't happened at all. So I don't have a lot of faith in the Saints here over the next 2-3 years, but maybe Kellen Moore proves me wrong.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Obviously, it's going to take a lot to rebuild the Saints, and if Kellen Moore can do it, he's going to be one of the top coaches in the NFL. That'll for sure prove its course. Let's talk about some of the other rumors in the NFL, and let's start with Aaron Rodgers. The Jets announced that they will not be bringing back Aaron Rodgers, and Rodgers adds to a decent group of quarterbacks that could be available this offseason. You have Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Sam Darnold, potentially Matthew Stafford, Justin Fields, right? These are some solid pieces you could plug and play in some offenses that, they're not necessarily at the peaks. Maybe Sam Darnold is at the peak of his career, but these guys have proven in the past they can play some ball. Brady, the Raiders have an opening. Which quarterback would fit best for the Las Vegas Raiders based on some of these quarterbacks that could be available?
If you have any interest in winning, not Aaron Rodgers. I think Aaron Rodgers is the most circus sideshow act in the NFL. We saw that. And I will gladly take my victory lap on people, because people thought that this was going to be Brady to Tampa. This was going to be Peyton to Denver. And the dude won 5 games over a 2-year span. I know he was hurt in the first year, but it was a horrible year this year where people, including us, thought that they could be a first-place level team, a team that contended for maybe even an AFC championship berth. They didn't even come remotely close to that with a talented roster. Scapegoated the coach, which is a classic Rodgers move. The guy's all-time talent at quarterback, don't get me wrong, but he's just also a massive loser. And I saw that pretty much the Jets came to him with these demands. One of them was like, you got to stop going on the Pat McAfee show. You got to be at minicamp. You got to be at OTAs. Otherwise we'll smell you. And Aaron Glenn, that was pretty much his attempt at getting the control back, getting the leverage back. Aaron Rodgers didn't seem to like that, and now he's at the door. And I don't think that Vegas is happening. They're going to be looking for somebody, to build with. Even though Pete Carroll's an older coach, they're not going to be looking for Rodgers to go there for 1 year. The roster isn't there to compete with a 1-year, 2-year bridge guy. So I think the 3 options for Aaron Rodgers are A, retirement, which he should do. He shouldn't embarrass himself and stain his legacy any further. B, pull a Brett Favre and go to the Vikings and mentor JJ McCarthy possibly, or just be there competing for the starting role. He's completed half of the Brett Favre trajectory checklist to this point. Might as well add another one under his belt and just keep becoming a clone of him. Or he could go to the Steelers. From what it sounds like, I don't think that the Steelers are very confident in Russell Wilson or Justin Fields being their starting quarterback next year. And I think it would be a mistake for them to bring in Rodgers. They would just keep doing what they've been doing for the last however many years, of putting a mediocre stopgap quarterback in there, refusing to change anything, not blowing it up. And there's a good chance that Rodgers would end up getting Mike Tomlin fired, I think. But I think those are the 3 options for him right now.
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers is an interesting case because obviously Achilles injury completely made him immobile last year. He had some games where you're like, man, he really spun the ball well, but it just wasn't the same last year. He wasn't the same player. His decision-making was worse than it had been in the past with a year off of football, and it was concerning. I thought with Rodgers' first year on the Jets before the injury, I'm like, hey, he'll probably still be pretty good. The Jets have some talent. Rodgers was not very good last season, and it's interesting. You have a market potentially in Las Vegas if they want to try to go all in as much as they can with Pete Carroll being an older coach. I could see that. If Rodgers wants to go win games, you mentioned Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's interesting for me. if they don't go with Russell Wilson or Justin Fields, what does it hurt if they sign up for Aaron Rodgers? It's probably a pretty close deal in annual value for Rodgers versus those guys, which is interesting. And then the final team for me that's interesting is the team in New York as well. It's the Giants. I feel like the Giants are interesting. If they don't go and get a quarterback, they could go get a 1-year stopgap quarterback that, just holds down the fort. Brian Dable secures another season with his job. The Giants win again. We'll see what happens, but it is just very fascinating that Rodgers could have basically no market at all this offseason as a starting quarterback, 2 years removed from back-to-back MVPs basically at this point. Or is it it might be 3 years now at this point, but it's not too long ago when he was just shredding the league, and it was a different quarterback at this time, and he's not even the best quarterback available at this point. Sam Darnold is probably the best quarterback available at this point. And to be honest, Brady, if I think a team fits best with Darnold, it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. I am changing what I'm thinking. No, a lot of people are saying the Raiders as that good fit for Sam Darnold. If I am Mike Tomlin and I am looking at my roster and what I could have available, Sam Darnold is their best option. And here's why. They're never going to be picking within the top 10. They're always going to have 8 to 9 to 10 wins, losing the first round of the playoffs, whatever it is, right? They don't have the luxury of picking that top guy. Sam Darnold is just available this offseason. He absolutely shit the bed in the last 2 games, hurting his value, driving down that annual price. That is something these Steelers can't afford this offseason. You get Sam Darnold, you get him another weapon, potentially like Deebo Samuel per se. I think the Steelers would be in a better position than they are with Russell Wilson or Justin Fields this past year. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I could see it. I could see Darnold to Pittsburgh, but I'm still thinking either the Raiders or one of the teams in New York. Honestly, I'm not fully ruling out him going back to the Jets with a new regime and everything. I could see the Giants, although we hear the whispers.
In New York.
Yeah, I see the whispers of what the Giants could be planning right now with the different quarterback, but I think Sam Darnold could end up with either of those two teams or the Raiders right now. I don't think he's going back to Minnesota. That is the one thing I'll say for Sam Darnold is I think he's out of there.
Yeah, what's interesting too is Stafford's name has been thrown around at all. What do you think about Stafford potentially being thrown around in trades, and do you think there's any smoke to that?
I don't think he's going to get moved. He's either playing for the Rams or not playing, in my opinion. I saw the Giants want him, but the Rams want the 3rd pick, and if the Giants traded the 3rd pick for a 37, 38-year-old quarterback, I think that would be a really awful move and just completely ruining any chances of Brian Dable or the GM. I always forget how to pronounce his last name. Schoen.
Just call him Joe.
Yeah. It would ruin the chances of either of them having any longer after this year or the year after in New York. So I don't think Stafford's getting moved. Do think he's going to play, as he said, but I think it'll be in LA. So I don't think that he's getting traded anywhere. And it wouldn't make sense for him to want to go anywhere else either, unless the Rams were trying to ship him out, which wouldn't make a whole lot of sense because obviously you don't have a better chance to win in New York than you do with the Rams. So I think he's staying in LA, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think the Stafford rumors are just fake in every single way possible. I would be 100% surprised if he gets moved. Stafford's at the end of his career, right? Sean McVay absolutely loves the guy. It's a match made in heaven for both of them. They're a winning team. They were very close to knocking off the Eagles in the postseason. Maybe if it wasn't for bad conditions, they might win that game, right? And then you take a look at some of the teams that are in the market for a quarterback. The best teams, probably Pittsburgh right now, that would want a veteran quarterback. That's not even close to what Los Angeles is. And then if you look on the Rams side of things, why would you trade Stafford when you don't have a plan at the quarterback position for the future? It's not like they can go get anybody. I mean, Sam Darnold, maybe I guess they could go fill in, but there's not a lot of options out there, and this is not a deep draft class for quarterbacks, so it doesn't really make sense for the Rams to move off of Stafford just yet. Also, some other trade news we're getting. Jermaine Pratt recently requested a trade from the Cincinnati Bengals. Pratt was one of 3 linebackers in the NFL with 160 tackles and 6+ turnover-worthy plays. Brady, Pratt is probably the best defender outside of Trey Hendrickson on that Bengals defense. What do you think is happening in Cincinnati, and is this because they're trying to go pay T. Higgins?
Well, I don't even think it's that. They said that he came to them and asked them for the move, and he was really close with Lou Anarumo. So I think he was upset by that move, but I don't really think it's a huge needle mover. It'll be a nice piece for somebody that had a bad run defense. I'm just looking at some of these teams that were some of the worst in defending the run. Dallas, Carolina, San Fran, Washington, Chicago. Those are all teams that I would
I
think.
think, to be honest, a good fit would be Chicago. They cut Jermaine Edmonds, save some money, go get Jermaine Pratt. I think that would be a good fit for them.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. So we'll see. Not really a big time move to me, but definitely interesting and definitely not a good sign for Al Golden as he takes over as the Cincinnati DC, that one of his most talented players is already wanting to be out of there.
Yeah, and if Jermaine Pratt didn't play on the Bengals, I'm guarantee you the Chiefs would be interested a little bit in him because of Nick Bolton potentially being gone in free agency this year. He's a cheaper option, not as good as Bolton, but he's a solid player. And I think for teams that are in a tighter cap situation, he could fit in as that run stopping linebacker that a lot of teams need.
You think he'd want to go there? You think he would want to go after all the Cincinnati KC beef? I remember the video of him.
Like I said, I don't think it's ever going to happen. I just thought
him blowing up after the 2022 AFC Championship game.
Like I said, if they were two blind teams, I think it would be a good fit. But since it's the Bengals and the Chiefs, it won't happen. That is the final line on that one. Let's talk about the Chiefs real quick. Travis Kelce recently mentioned on the New Heights podcast that he is taking time to consider his future in the NFL and that he owes it to his teammates to make a wholehearted decision on what he does next year. Where do you think Kelce is leaning at this point?
We talked about it and we said that if the Chiefs were to lose this Super Bowl, that he would probably be back. I'm kind of walking that back now just after hearing his comments and hearing, his tone on the podcast. Just everything to me, maybe I'm just misreading him, but everything to me sounded like a guy that really wants to be done, but doesn't want to let his teammates down, doesn't want to leave the Chiefs out to dry. He's like, man, it's frustrating not being able to have the impact you once had, but still trying to play your role. It stinks that it really didn't go the way we want, but I'm going to have to think long and hard about this. Sometimes the grind makes you better, but sometimes it drives you crazy. This year it drove me crazy, and I was just exhausted by the end. And I think that there's a chance that this is a 2018 Gronk, and he comes back. Obviously, Gronk took a year off and then came back for 2 more years, but it could be a situation like that. But I just think that with Travis Kelce, there's so much money waiting for him on the other side, and just such a lavish lifestyle, honestly, that doesn't involve the grueling process on your body with his podcast, with all of the media appearances. He wants to get into acting and then just like being with Taylor Swift all the time. I think that's like an appealing lifestyle change after football. And I'm not ruling out him coming back next year, but to me, his comments say like he's really thinking about hanging it up. And then I saw some Chiefs page point this out. I don't know if there's anything to this, but it was just the mic'd up on Sunday night. And it was Mahomes going up to all the different players on the sideline. And to everybody else, he was dapping them up saying, hey, we'll be back. Like, love you. We'll be back. But to Kelce, he didn't say anything about we'll be back. He just said, hey, man, I appreciate everything you've done for me, bro. I love you, man. And Kelce was like, that. Like, I appreciate you too. I got to thank you for everything you've done for me. So I don't know if there's anything to that. I just saw a bunch of Chiefs fans posting that same clip. So we'll see. But my answer is I think he's leaning towards retiring. I really do.
See, this is where I think is what 100% happened. Travis Kelce was going to retire after the Super Bowl. No doubtedly. I have no doubt in my mind Travis Kelce was going to walk away after the Super Bowl. He expected them to win. He expected them to get the three-peat. He expected to go out on top. And then the Chiefs played probably their worst game in the last 6 to 7 years of, Kelce's time with Mahomes. And, it left a sour taste in his mouth. He truly wanted to go out on top. He thought he had the opportunity to, and he didn't get that. He wanted that ending where it was going to go on top. He played horrible too. He admitted it. He was a bad leader, all this stuff. And I feel like it's eating him up. He probably was leaning retirement, and now he's like, man, am I really going to let my career end on that game where we played so poorly, where I played so poorly? And, I feel like he's torn at this point. If that was his mindset in the Super Bowl, where he was probably going to retire after they won the game on a three-peat, walk out on top, all that type of stuff, they lose the game the way they do, this guy's truly 50-50 on what he's going to do. Like, he is absolutely torn on if he's going to play football or not. I think Kelce at this point understands what type of a player he is. He is more of a leader on the Chiefs than he is necessarily the, I don't want to say, he's still a game changer, but he's not necessarily an elite game
Not the
changer.
guy anymore.
He's not, because Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy have arrived. Those guys are the true 1 and 2 options in this offense. They're really good football players. Kelce is the third option in this offense now, and that's probably not a bad thing for the Chiefs, is that Kelce is a third option in the offense. And I just think he's in such a predicament now due to the way they lost that game. And I wouldn't be surprised if he comes back unwillingly because of how it ended. But I also wouldn't be surprised if he retires, because it really seems like he was planning on retiring after that game.
Yeah, I definitely agree that he certainly hasn't made a decision yet, in my opinion. But you also got to look at the financial implications of it. If Kelce does come back, it's a $19 million cap hit for a guy to be a number 3, number 4 option. And obviously, some of that you're paying for the leadership. You're paying for the just kind of the glue that Travis Kelce is to this organization. And obviously, like I said, similar situation to when Gronk was at the tail end. Gronk wasn't the alpha that he was at one point when he was at the tail end of his career, but he was still, Brady's guy. He was still like a reliable target. He was still a great vet to have, but he wasn't going for 1,210 or whatever. Like Kelce would be the same thing for Mahomes and the Chiefs if he does come back, but it'll be interesting. And if Kelce does retire, I would be interested to see if they tried to draft a tight end, sign one, or just rock out with Noah Gray as tight end one.
I think the plan, I think Noah Gray is ready for that tight end one role. I think they'll probably go a committee. Like, the Chiefs have other places I think they value that they need to address this offseason, especially at the tackle position. I feel like, a name that was interesting, I know we're going to talk about this in our free agency episodes, Ronnie Staley from the Ravens. That would be interesting. I don't know if he leaves Baltimore or not, but that would be the top tackle on the market, and he's been really good in his career. If he winds up going to Kansas City, man, that would be a big time shift for the Chiefs. And they probably have to pay a pretty penny, but I mean, they got to at this point. They've tried whatever it is at left tackle. And what was interesting? A few years ago, they gave Trent Williams a 6-year, $133 million deal to play left tackle, and he turned it down to go back to the 49ers. And could you imagine if we had Trent Williams and KC? My God, that would be nuts.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. The thing for Kansas City that's really going to make things not tricky because of the Chiefs, not tricky as in they can't win because of it, but they're going to have to manage it. So these cap hits are about to start hitting them hard over the next couple of years. Mahomes' cap hit is about to increase exponentially. Obviously, you paid some of the offensive linemen some pretty big bucks. Tooney, Creed Humphrey. Trey Smith will be walking out the door, so you're not going to have to worry about paying him. But Kelce's eating money. Chris Jones is eating money. And at some point in the next year, you're going to have to pay Trent McDuffie as well. So that's why it's so hard to consistently win. I believe that the Chiefs can do what the Patriots did and just kind of ride the core guys and have good surrounding pieces. But in the salary cap era, it's so hard because when you build a team that wins so much, it's obviously a bunch of great players and all of them want to get paid, and you kind of have to find a way to balance that. So that will be what's interesting for me as the Chiefs kind of head into this second stretch of Mahomes' career. Obviously, we're through the first 7, but it'll be interesting to see how they manage the financial aspects of things over the coming 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, and as good as Patrick Mahomes is and other quarterbacks in the NFL, it takes all 22 guys, and it takes even more than that. You need depth. You need all this different stuff to form a great Super Bowl team, and that's why we have GMs, Brady. That's why these guys get paid the big bucks, to be able to maneuver all this money, find salary cap loopholes that we have no clue about until the last minute. And we're like, oh, there's no salary cap in football? Oh, yeah, they just move money around out of their assets. But we'll see what happens. We got a loaded offseason for you guys coming underway. Next week, we will get through a lot of our free agency positional breakdowns for you guys, and then we'll have a massive predictions video for you guys to break down. If you guys are interested in that, make sure you guys go drop a subscribe button. Our next goal is 500. We hit that 400 mark. Appreciate all you that are subscribed already. If you're not, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And me and Brady will catch you all next time.
I'll see y'all later.